Collegio Cairoli. It's my pleasure to open today's event, AI from media generation to media manipulation. I stand here tonight in a double capacity, as a professional journalist by vocation, I would say, but above all as an alumnus of Collegio Cairoli. For this reason, I'm particularly happy to and honored to introduce, together with fellow alumnus Luca, our distinguished international guests. AI is not only timely but crucial for the present, and over the past few years, artificial intelligence has moved from being a specialized technological field to becoming a central force in how information is produced, distributed, and consumed. Today, AI is capable of generating text, images with the speed and realism. At the same time, it is increasingly involved in the process that filter, prioritize, and even distort public information. This dual nature lies at the heart of our discussion tonight. AI as a tool for creation, but also as a potential instrument of manipulation. This conference takes place in a significant moment because just a few days ago, Pope Leo published his first encyclical dedicated to artificial intelligence. I haven't read it so far, but I know that he describes AI as a gift from God. So, as well as is really concerned about this power of artificial intelligence, especially how central and how complex this topic has become ethically and culturally. We'll begin with Dulcia Meyers from the Netherlands. Will guide us through a reflection on visual culture, showing how AI is reshaping the very concept of image making, and from archetype to algorithm. Then Camilla Warrender from the US will reflect on the relationship between AI, news, and democracy, right? And finally, Tihomir Ivanov from Bulgaria will take us closer to the technological dimension, offering insights straight from the source, from those who develop and work with these systems. Thank you all for being here this evening, especially to our Rettore, Professor Zatti. And now, let's begin. Thanks.
Can everybody hear me? But for the registration, I had to use the mic. How do I switch it on? Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for the invitation, for making me speak here in this incredible environment. I hope you students know how privileged you are to study here. And I'm an art historian, so I'm projecting artworks, and I always in my classroom invite the students to come sit up front so that you see more details of my artworks. So please feel free to come closer to my screen. And professors never eat students. I don't know why students are always sitting in the back. This looks good. Thank you so much for following my suggestion. Yep. This looks so much better, guys. The title, Artifact to Algorithm. let me first make clear, I'm an art historian, and my field of research is Old Masters and architecture all of before 1800. So I know nothing about AI to start with. And I would like to also make clear in my title what this word means, because depending on its context, it can take up different meanings. Artifact in the context of art, of history, of culture, means any man-made item or object that has cultural or artistic significance. So forget about the context in medicine or engineering, or Tim, your context. Artifact means quite something else. To talk about image making and the visual arts, that's a wide topic, so I thought, why don't I single out this one aspect, realism, the pursuit of realism and the representation of reality. And I'm bringing you back to antiquity, the Greeks and the Romans. Here we are in the 5th century BC, before Christ, as you know, and not before computerization. 5th century, a famous celebrated match or contest between two painters, Zeuxis and Parrhasius. It's a story that was told by Pliny the Elder, a Roman, a few centuries later in his Historia Naturalis. These two painters were asked by their fellow citizens, who of the two is better? Let's start a contest. And thanks to Pliny, we know how it went, but unfortunately, what the two painted is not anymore amongst us. We have no trace of what they painted, but we know that Zeuxis, who was the most celebrated one in this time period, that he painted a bunch of grapes so realistically that the birds, when it was ready, came flying towards his fresco to peck the fruit. That realistically was done. And it was said that when their paintings were ready, the frescoes, that it was first covered by a curtain and it should be removed. I only have, wrong direction. I only have a 17th century depiction of this story, because artists later on depicted it. There you see the contest, you see on the right-hand side the grapes of Zeuxis and the birds that fly towards the fruit. And then Zeuxis says to his contester, Parrhasius, come on, reveal your painting, open the curtain. But what turned out was that the curtain was the painting. So, Zeuxis tricked nature, the birds, but Parrhasius tricked his fellow artist. It's called trompe-l'œil with the French word, to deceive the eye or to trick the eye. And that was the first historical testimonial of that technique. Image making, that's the topic, between, in antiquity, idealization always and realism. You see, you all know, of course, the Venus of Milo, and then the young man, the two Greek statues. Maybe it's Antinos, but highly idealized. And on the right-hand side, a Roman sculpture, a face. It was based on a death mask and then sculpted in stone. The Romans, in contrast to the Greeks, were much more interested in real, true realism, as you can tell, as you can see by that bust. I'm jumping from antiquity to the time period that idealized antiquity. It's called the Renaissance. We're entering the 1400s and the 1500s because realism wasn't much sought after during the Middle Ages. The medieval art had a whole different kind of relationship with reality, and especially with the divine. The Renaissance was celebrated for the discovery of the third dimension and the central vanishing point. Guess why? Because I'm bringing you to Florence, Piazza del Duomo, to the celebrated, you all may know him, the celebrated architect Brunelleschi, and the invention of linear perspective. And here we see how mathematics kicks into the arts. What he did was he stood with his back against the Duomo, then put a hole into his panel on which he wanted to paint, or he wanted to check something, then put a mirror right in front, 2 holes in it, and then looking at the baptistery right in front of the Duomo. And he was wondering, how does the human eye perceive reality? And he understood, wow, when you look further into depth, the lines recede, they converge. In the same time period, first half of the 1400s, there was a man, Alberti, who started writing theory of art on painting. He wrote a theory or a treatise on architecture, etc., in a very systematic, mathematical, and scientific way. First of all, he writes, on the surface on which I am going to paint, I draw a rectangle of whatever size I want, which I regard as an open window through which the subject to be painted is seen, and I decide how large I wish the human figures in the painting to be. This was the 30s of the 1400s. It's about the illusion of reality that I'm talking, through a convincing depiction of spatial depth on a 2-dimensional surface. And the one who immediately applied it, or implemented it, was a painter Masaccio, who knew Alberti, who knew Brunelleschi, in early Renaissance Florence. This is a fresco we're looking at, with the depiction of the Trinity, La Trinità, made early 1400s. It's in the Santa Maria Novella in Florence, the church right next to the railway station. Mathematically constructed linear perspective. He applied it. And if we look at that fresco, it's a flat depiction on a flat wall, but the painter depicted the Trinity in such a way as if you're looking into a side chapel. And then the frame in Renaissance or antique style, Roman, Greek style, the frame is as if it was of real stone, which normally in a church frames a painting. And you see here how the lines recede at the exact level where the eye of the viewer is. He took that into account. So here we see a conscious construction of a work of art within the mind of the artist, the viewer. Not only, you may remember below there, at our level, he painted a skeleton. And you all may know what it means. Io fui già quel che voi siete e quel che io son voi anco sarete. Or, to translate for the panel, what you are now, I once was. What I am now, you will become. It's a memento mori, or remember that you will die. Very, very Christian, very Catholic. Manipulation. Renaissance painters used perspective to build a representation of the world that would fit their own, or rather their patrons' actions and interests. So the perspective is therefore not a window in the world, but a window to frame and tell a story. Let's look at Holbein, a German artist who worked also in London. This is a celebrated painting that hangs in the National Gallery, The Ambassadors. We see 2 young guys. The one is 25, the other 27, more or less your age probably, or a little bit older. They're leaning on a table, a 2-tiered table, with all kinds of instruments on top. Instruments that measure, the ones on top that measure the heavens, the planets, etc., and below, musical instruments. Many art historians wrote about it, infinite articles for interpretation. Perhaps the measures is the divine, the measures of the heavens, the universe and the cosmos is the world of the divine, and the music, the world of man. But what I am focusing on specifically with you is on that huge, big spot right on front. If you have no idea what that is, I only have 20 minutes, so you have no time for questions and replies. But I'm showing you. If you move fully to the right of the painting, that photo taken on the right-hand side, you can see that spot up front correctly, optically correct. It's a skull. More or less the same motif as we saw a century earlier in Masaccio. Look, so distorted that you would say, why would they do this? Two ambassadors, two French ambassadors working in London. There is such a message behind this construction. It's called this technique anamorphosis, the skull as an optically unstable memento mori, alerts viewers, you and me, to the or the changeability of human perception. And look, in the upper left corner of the green curtain, a crucifix, half concealed. Illusionism, art of the trompe-l'œil, and human perception, the illusion of the visible form, understanding it as a work of thought, as a political instrument, and finally as a possibly theological story of the invisible, all possible. We enter gradually with optics and mathematics, art and science, and the two wedded to mimic real life or reality. Let's focus on a genre called portraiture, where likeness is important, but at the same time it can be realistic, yet idealized. Here, Raffaello, who doesn't know Raphael, the famous celebrated painter, the two husband and wife, or husband and wife to become, the Doni couple, here depicted in lavish clothes against a background. The background is landscape, very extraordinary for the time, that stretches far into the depth, as if you look through a window, or they are sitting on a terrace and you look their background, you see their background. It's about depth and the third dimension on this 2D surface. Two proud people, just very wealthy and successful tradesmen and merchants. Is it likeness? My students always asked, how can you tell? Because those people are dead. Or is it idealized, the portraits? If we look at Mary and the child and son Giovanni Battista, John the Baptist, you see a face that's very idealized, the Greek way, for Mary. No specific personal individual traits. If we go back to her face, you see clearly that it doesn't conform to the strict proportions of a Greek beautiful female face. But yet, so there is likeness, it's her, and we know something about it because somebody wrote about these two paintings, but yet she's absolutely idealized. In painting, and with the brush, you can manipulate. So it's more than just realistic, and in portraiture, more than just likeness. There is a message that they try to get across. I'm bringing you to a Flemish artist, Pieter Aertsen. We're now in the 16th century, the later 16th century, and we see a meat stall, whoa, depicted right up front. First, how do you call it in primo piano in English? Foreground. I don't know why I forgot that word. On the foreground, all that meat, etc., etc. But what it is about is, now that they know perspective, they manipulate perspective to tell the story. Because if you look very well in the background, your left, you see there Mary and Christ handing out alms to the poor. It's about that, instead of being seduced to all that fruit, vegetable, meat. It's actually a painting that says, don't only be involved with, in modern terms, sex and drugs and rock and roll, but go further what it is about. It manipulates, it tells a story. Here, the realism of food, and now we're in the early 17th century, was depicted in such a way that, you know, these are just copies. I'm just projecting reproductions. If you're standing in front of this painting, you actually see how the apple hanging on the upper left is in the process of rotting. Amazing. Of decaying. It's hyper real. San Diego Museum of Art. Or Willem Kalf, this still life. What is it about? To get realism across, you have to be able to depict with your brush texture. Here, cloth is cloth. The lemon is lemon. The beautiful Chinese pottery, everything, the texture is done in such an incredible way, you really think that you can touch those objects. That realistic. Or Gerard Douw, a Dutchman, he depicted a guy smoking a pipe with a curtain in front, but the curtain is painted, and it reminds us all of this match, this contest between Zeuxis and Parrhasius. It was about making it optically and in texture so well that the viewer may get tricked and wants to pull the curtain further open. Image making. You compose very intentionally the representation in the making of meaning. It's century old. Optical deception and highly skilled, and that Greek word you must know, techne. Techne, from where our word technique comes from. All in play to trick the eye. I'm bringing you to Rome. We're in the High Baroque now, second part of the 1600s. The Gesù, that magnificent piece of architecture. When you're standing inside of the church and you look up at the ceiling, it is as if that ceiling opens up towards heaven and angels swirl towards the name of Jesus at the very center, while angels at the other side fall down. The point is, here we see the vault of the architecture, all gilded, and then the falling angels painted on stucco layer that go beyond the frame. They fall into our reality, the reality of the viewer who is standing in the central nave and looks up. And then, if you look very carefully on the right-hand side, but you also see it in my next slide, here the clouds, etc., you see on the left and the right-hand side real sculpture, 3D. So you see architecture, painting on stucco, and 3D sculpture. All the media of the visual arts have been used to persuade you in. This was all art done during the Counter-Reformation. And look at the shadow of the clouds on the vault. It's all painted, also the shadow. Here you see clearly how it from flat, but the illusion of 3D, and then it becomes 3D in sculpture, holding the frame of the ceiling. The art of illusion, this was, stretched to its extreme. It's of course a highly effective psychological tool in the time of the Counter-Reformation, when the Holy Roman Catholic Church was attacked by all kinds of other religions, inspired by Martin Luther and his followers, I should say, because there were many. A counter-reformative attack. Artists were asked by papacy to use all the means that they could develop to convince or to persuade the believer to stay Roman Catholic. So offering the faithful, in this case, in the Gesù, beyond the physical and tangible world, a direct glimpse of a divine realm. I'm jumping with you to the 19th century. There's a Spanish artist. Look at the art of illusion here. Are we looking at the two girls, dos niñas, or are they looking at us? It's so realistically done. Or the same artist, with the title Escaping Criticism. Wow, the boy challenges his frame. He steps out of it, all painted. It is the time, this 19th century, when we already witnessed the development of the photo camera, a man-made tool. Realistic and idealized images are possible with the camera, and the moving image, the film, of which I have no example here. But I'm showing you a picture of Alistair Morrison, made of this Hollywood icon, Bette Davis. I don't know, maybe you're too young to know Bette Davis, but she was a celebrity. There she is in all her beauty, black and white, idealized. And there, almost 80 years old, on silver gelatin paper, printed. Incredible, that realism, versus when she was still the icon in Hollywood. We have then gradually manipulated photography, and of course, Photoshop. Is it faking it? Question. Here is a painting, Joseph Karl Stieler. The painter was permitted 4 sittings with Beethoven because he didn't like it. He was a very introvert man. Man-made painting, Beethoven, when composing the Messa Solemnis. We're 1820, not yet the photo camera there. Look at the next painting. Photoshopped. Mick Jagger rolling over Beethoven. No brush here, no tools here, no signs, no... That's my point. I'm entering the era of digital portraits. Look here. Non-AI generated or modified. That's what iStock claims. Wow, that realism. I'm projecting it next to that Roman bust that I started almost with. That realism. We're fascinated by this, how to get realism down. But this was done with a photo camera, a tool, not with hammer and claw chisel. Or hyperrealism. We saw that already in the 1600s in the still life of the painter, of the Spanish painter. Look at this hyperrealism, AI generated. The statement of Adobe stock does not have to be deceptive and misleading. I'm putting it next to this painting, 17th century. An artist who did this kind of realism. Look at her flesh, her skin. A spinster with a very thin thread. She's looking out at us, all with the brush, with paint, man-made. Old people. Or generative AI, we just don't know anymore. But why am I projecting this? A celebrated work of Picasso, The Bull. What we see here is that concept or idea goes over techne. We are now in the 20th century, in the middle of the Second World War. It's not anymore important to know the craft. Artists are searching for other tools or other means of expression. And Picasso, being a Spaniard, was obsessed with the bull, il toro. And he just roamed around, and amongst his stuff that he found somewhere in the street, he saw an old seat, this is just clocking me, seat of a bike, and then he saw the handlebars, and there he put it together. He thinks as an artist in forms and shapes, and there is the bull. No techne here, no art, no craft. Yes, art, but no craft, no skill. All of that. The discussion back then, whoa, it was exhibited in Paris in 1943. If you would read the critics, some were so angry, Picasso had to take this artwork down because they said, this is not art. I keep it open. I stumbled upon a website where there was this trick, a play trick. Click on the person who is real. Well, the first click I made was incorrect. I thought that is the real portrait, the other one is the AI generated. I couldn't tell. And I have quite well trained eyes as an art historian. I couldn't tell. Who is fake? Who is real? Left or right? Guys? Which face is the real one? Which is the fake one? AI generated. And you said the right one. Oh. Why did you say the right one? Because the student is right. But it's really difficult. So, this is the central issue. Is the authority of images seriously challenged? We've seen from antiquity on that it's about manipulation, about tricking the eye, throughout the history of the visual arts. World leaders, this celebrated picture, waiting at the White House, AI generated. There is no connection to reality. Generative AI especially creates something new beyond reality, or perhaps without a connection to reality. How new is that after my overview of the visual arts? I thought I'd make him ask AI. Thank you for your attention.
So thank you, Dulce, for your intervention. And I'm pleased to introduce, first of all, hi everyone. Been an alumni too of the Collegio Cairoli. It's always funny to be on the other side. And I'm really, really pleased to introduce you Camilla Warrender, managing editor of Newscoop. Just a brief note. I met Camilla, it was more than 8 years ago, when there was already ChatGPT. ChatGPT already existed in 2018. We didn't know, at least me, myself, I didn't know, I was not aware. The first time we met each other, our first connection was when I was living in Netherlands, and we were back there talking about fact-checking and fake news. We were just at the really first point, the really tip of the iceberg. And because in these 8 years, not only political conditions changed, but also the way to communicate politics and social issues changed. And for anything more, I'll leave the floor to Camilla.
Thank you, Luca. Good evening. I'm so glad to have the opportunity to speak with you this evening. We have a big topic. Before I begin, I want to mention that I cite the US and Israel quite frequently throughout my talk, for good reason. The US and Israeli governments are prime examples of the abuse and dangers that come from integrating this technology into business and governance without controls. The two governments work very closely together, and they're aggressively exporting the tech to other countries. Despite the EU not developing the tools as the US and Israel are, everyone is buying them and using them. It's spreading, and it's a concern everywhere. So, AI and democracy. Given what we're watching in America right now, one may ask, why then democracy? It's more than reasonable to ask whether democracy is the best form of government. But since systems of government don't change overnight, and enlightened despots and philosopher kings don't grow on trees, we'll simply argue for the moment that democracy is what we have, if we can keep it. Whether we keep it as being called into question by current political trends, the trajectory of AI, and the way those two intersect. But to discuss the potential impacts of AI on democracy, we need to think beyond the innate properties of the technology and focus instead on the systems, incentives, and political forces with which AI is being built, deployed, and manipulated. The core tension is that generative AI is an all-purpose tool. The same technology that threatens democracy can also enable legitimate political speech, organizing, and journalism. So the challenge is not so much inherent to AI, but to governance. Generative AI models hold tremendous potential for innovation and creativity. They can facilitate medical advancement, citizen participation, and more equitable, efficient, and responsive government. But that's not where the primary AI investment is going. The race to the top of technological primacy is instead being driven by those who seem to see their interests better served by an authoritarian system than a democratic one. Thank you. As it is right now, AI is posing severe long-term risks to democracy by erosion of trust, manipulation of public opinion, and concentration of power. So, how does the immediate problem present? We see that generative AI can create disinformation at scale, deepfakes, and synthetic media. It can also micro-target messaging and interfere with elections. It can send millions of human-sounding letters or emails to policymakers, feigning support or opposition for certain policies. Bot armies can shift public opinion over time. When AI generates unlimited political content cheaply, it drowns out genuine civic participation, leading to information chaos. Citizens struggle to identify truth. AI-driven feeds optimize for engagement, not truth or civic health. Those in control can manipulate users through recommendation algorithms to amplify outrage and increase polarization. That already happens with social media, but AI now supercharges it, and at little to no cost. In the end, we see a liar's dividend where genuine information and footage can be dismissed as fake. When people no longer trust what they see and hear, trust in a shared reality, the connective tissue of democracy begins to dissolve. The Pew Research Center has found that about half of Americans feel that the increase of AI in their lives concerns them more than excites them, for good reason. The first big issue is jobs. Sam Altman's OpenAI recently issued a glowing report on the extraordinary future ahead with AI. People aren't buying it, especially young people who see the job market already being decimated. In recent weeks, university commencement speakers who tried to extol the benefits of frontier AI were all but booed off stage, including former Google CEO Eric Schmidt. Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei is far more honest than Sam Altman. He said that AI could eliminate half of all entry-level white-collar jobs in 1 to 5 years. Microsoft AI CEO Mustafa Suleyman warned that most white-collar work, quote, will be fully automated by an AI within the next 12 to 18 months. So the crisis has arrived. There's also the surveillance and censorship made so easy by AI and already implemented in Israel, the US, Palestine, China, and elsewhere, corroding privacy and political expression. AI assists so-called democratic governments and their subcontractors to monitor communications, predict protests, and track citizens through facial recognition, suppressing opposition quickly and cheaply. Of enormous concern is that AI is being used to replace human judgment in governance, in policing, in welfare decisions, immigration screening, sentencing recommendations, and predictive risk analysis. AI models trained on past data perpetuate societal biases. With an inherent lack of transparency, decisions are hard to appeal. I don't have to imagine this because we already see it in America with the frightful deployment of AI in immigration and policing systems. Then there are the data centers, not only for general AI use, but also for military AI purposes. The physical infrastructure of AI puts enormous strain on water supplies, environments, and electrical grids of communities, raising electrical costs for residents who have no say in whether a data center appears in their community, with no guardrails, no accountability, and no transparency. This is the US right now. By 2028, data centers are estimated to consume fully 12% of all electricity in the US. The colossal Stratus project going up now in Utah will take more than twice the energy used by the entire state, estimated to raise temperatures by as much as 28 degrees at night. People are pushing back, concerned about the effect on climate and on health, but it's hard to stop when no part of the approval process has been democratic. And this is another big problem for democracy. Democratic systems are intentionally slow in order to allow for debate, checks and balances, and judicial review. Governments have instead begun to favor the speed and efficiency AI provides, but also to allow them to move quickly in implementing non-democratic systems and tools, leaving no time for citizens to revolt. So it's instructive to look at the system making this possible. A few years ago, Yanis Varoufakis, former finance minister of Greece, began speaking about what he called techno-feudalism, a kind of digital capitalism with digital platforms, data, and online markets, replacing traditional capitalism with what he felt was a much more exploitative system. Varoufakis said that Amazon, for example, might look like a market, but Jeff Bezos doesn't produce capital. He charges rent, taking 40% of everything. That's not capitalism, but feudalism. And we're the serfs, with our tweets and posts and purchases building value in his company and others. That system, Varoufakis said, was already moving us away from capitalism, and certainly from the principles of democracy. It left the world grappling with an entirely new economic system, resulting in a completely different kind of political power. His argument was a good one, and it does seem that that's where the current problem began. Well, Varoufakis now sees AI as the engine of techno-feudalism. It is true that throughout history, private interests captured the value of many promising technologies. It happened with the railroad, and again, much later with the internet. This feels different. If one takes Varoufakis' argument seriously, one sees that the tech platforms changed completely the system, and AI is now supercharging it. So, to the issue that drives most other issues, concentration of power. Because advanced AI development requires massive computing infrastructure, huge data sets, top engineering talent, and enormous capital, if it's not treated as a public utility, a public good, then its control and influence of necessity ends up concentrated in the hands of a small number of wealthy governments and tech companies. Unfortunately, AI has been largely developed at a time and in a place where money and power are the primary focus and goal in America. With an administration right now that's probably the most corrupt in the history of the Republic, there are no meaningful regulations that could restrain the acquisition of more money and power. US tech firms are well integrated into the government's political and military architecture, with AI now a driving element in both. A quick overview of the track record of some of the biggest tech firms helps to focus the argument. But since our time here is short, I'll comment first on one of the better ones, though with its own compromised record, followed by the company that's far and away the most dangerous. So Microsoft deserves credit for its election integrity work and threat intelligence operations. But there's a real gap between its democratic rhetoric and its actual conduct, indicating that it treats democracy more as a brand than a constraint. It publicly champions AI ethics, but lobbies against rules that enforce them. The company talks about AI safety, transparency, and regulation, but then rolls out their AI tools aggressively to authoritarian governments and continues to sell them for what they know are surveillance, immigration, and law enforcement systems that massively infringe on civil liberties. A prime example was the Israeli military surveillance case last year. Investigations by the Associated Press and The Guardian with 972 magazine in the West Bank found that Israel's military intelligence unit, 8200, had stored some 200 million hours of Palestinian phone calls, texts, and audio recordings from Gaza and the West Bank in a customized and segregated area within Microsoft's Azure cloud. Cross-checked with Israel's in-house AI targeting systems to pinpoint targets for attack. Leaked files indicate that Microsoft, including senior leadership, knew as early as 2021 what the Israeli military was planning. First, the company denied it, then only after sustained public pressure, media investigations, and employee revolts did it finally block Israel's access to the technology. 4 years and tens of thousands of deaths later. The company has also aggressively lobbied governments to implement strict licensing regimes for frontier AI models under the banner of public safety. But by convincing governments to mandate expensive, complex compliance structures, Microsoft effectively pulls up the ladder behind itself, protecting its massive investment in OpenAI by making it nearly impossible for smaller, open-source competitors to legally compete. And it's those smaller, open-source competitors that are the ones that could make a real difference to the direction AI is moving. When Microsoft and OpenAI push for regulation, they focus on apocalyptic risks of potential AGI or superintelligence, while downplaying the immediate concrete harms like job displacement, intellectual property theft, misinformation, and monopoly power that meaningful regulation could address pretty quickly. The biggest concern for democracy right now is not superintelligence, but large-scale manipulation, concentration of power, and erosion of trust. Microsoft's record is one of advocating ethics broadly while prioritizing business interests. And if Microsoft is among the most reliable, it's already clear we can't look to the big tech firms to develop and control the technology in a way that serves humankind. But I'll give you one more example that more than seals the argument. It's Palantir, a major AI big data analytics firm that doesn't trouble itself much to play the public relations game. CEO Alex Karp advocates heavily for Western military superiority, and his tools are deeply integrated into Western defense and aggression networks, immigration enforcement, police surveillance, and military targeting in conflict zones. As part of Palantir's strategic partnership with Israel, the company's technology helped develop Israel's Lavender AI system that was used to target tens of thousands of Palestinians, treating outputs of the AI as if they were human decisions. Karp's 22-point manifesto was recently in the news, advocating for a clear kind of techno-fascism. Alex Karp is often referred to, and not jokingly, as a supervillain. Now, I mention Palantir here because it's not a fringe player in US tech. It's very much central to the US AI ecosystem. And it makes it abundantly clear why there's reason for concern. So the fundamental problem is not AI itself. It's the lack of any meaningful regulation, which itself is based in the corruption and incompetence in government and the concentration of AI control in the hands of a few governments and companies with tremendous amounts of money, each racing toward geopolitical and commercial dominance. With their excessive influence over democratic communication channels and public discourse, and with their tools and budgets integrated fully into the government military apparatus, they have the means to create immense harm for people. And certainly to corrode democracy, both directly and indirectly. Chinese open source models are disrupting AI concentration in the US, and that's a good thing. But at the same time, powerful and unregulated open source models make the tech available to malicious actors more generally. So the future ahead. I shuddered when I first heard that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu had signed huge contracts with several firms to flood search engines with content favorable to Israel in order to influence the public internet data the LLMs are training on, working to game algorithms and create influencer networks that confuse reporting on the genocide in Gaza. All of it then gets picked up and driven forward by the AI engine. It drove home to me the likelihood that as things now stand, our histories will be written by our LLMs, with the output determined largely by how we train them, however biased, limited, or self-interested. But it goes even deeper than that. One of the most frightening things I've read was a statement coming from the Carnegie Endowment in some of their research on the trajectory of AI. One Carnegie researcher wrote, and I quote, "As AI technologies begin to produce and shape public knowledge autonomously, there is a threat that this knowledge becomes self-referential, a recursive byproduct of AI models themselves, rather than a reflection of evolving human knowledge. That points to a risk far greater than even what AI poses to democracy." So what's the answer? The development of high-powered generative AI during a global rise in authoritarianism and erosion of democratic safeguards presents us with an enormous challenge. We already see quite clearly that the outcome depends less on the technology itself and more on regulation, institutional safeguards, and distribution of power. In his AI-focused encyclical this week, Pope Leo said that AI threatens to reduce the human being to productivity, cognitive performance, and data. He said he was choosing his words carefully when calling for AI to be disarmed in order to prevent domination, exclusion, and death, and that AI is moving us toward new forms of slavery. The challenge is that with the current trends in government and with AI already captured by a few corporate tech titans, we don't have a lot of control over some of these things. But we do have some control. It's clear we need both technical solutions and societal efforts, public and private efforts that combine good governance, creative and responsible technology, and media literacy education. Because the problem occurs on so many levels, a multi-pronged approach is needed. This was my short list. We need real leaders, public servants with sufficient knowledge of the issues who can lead governments committed to addressing them. Right now, there aren't many on the horizon of the US government. We need more informed and committed young people to run for public office at every level all around the world, and an army of young voters to support them. Hopefully, before the damage to our world and our democracies is irretrievable, we'll succeed in electing real leaders who will figure out how to reclassify AI technology as a public utility, a public good. That's what's needed, and it should have been done at the outset. We also need meaningful regulation, however difficult to get. This is hard because widespread regulation of AI tech doesn't really work when the technology is being developed globally and when foreign governments are in competition with each other. We can't take it immediately out of the hands of big money, but we can start demanding some regulations that begin to serve the public interest. In speaking Monday at the Vatican, as Pope Leo's encyclical was presented, Anthropic's Christopher Olah said that corporations operate within a set of incentives and constraints that can make it hard to do the right thing, and that regulation must come from outside their ranks. I think that's true. We need widespread media literacy on the part of citizens. Their understanding of the forces at play in tech really matters. Knowing that algorithms prioritize outrage in order to drive user engagement should already be enough to make users stop and think before sharing content that angers them. Now, with the advent of AI, we need broader public recognition of the difference between real and fake, and a growing ability to detect and reject the inauthentic. The natural extension of media literacy is a commitment to the authentic. It's something that can create a real and sustainable difference to some of the current challenges. We all need to do our part to demand a culture of authenticity. If people are content to consume, share, and create fake media, we're doomed. If instead we not only educate ourselves as to what constitutes manipulation of users online, but we also turn away from AI slop, then those who generate fake media will lose money and influence, and we gradually turn the tide on at least one part of the problem. I'm working with my colleagues to contribute to a culture of authenticity. Tiomir here will tell you more about that in a moment. And lastly, we need citizen participation and persistent activism. Technology activism offers real promise. While foundational changes may be hard to achieve without scale, there are millions of tech solutions just waiting to be discovered. Together, they can make a difference. For instance, the University of Chicago has created tools central to the movement to pollute the data being scraped to train AIs. Chicago's poisoning tool, Nightshade, deliberately confuses the training data, making it harder for models to learn accurately from their content. If enough poison data is scraped, the model begins to corrupt. There's so many ways that technology can be used to block, slow, and confound the momentum of predatory AI. I encourage all of you with technology chops to use your imagination and use your networks to spread the word. Reach out to us at DangerX Labs or NewScoop if you'd like help, connections, more ideas, or wish to collaborate. And of course, we need protests and letters demanding government regulation globally to put pressure on governments to refuse to accept America's AI fascism, to refuse to use the tools the US and Israel are exporting for anything other than serving citizens and making democracy more effective, and to block those tools when necessary or helpful. While corporations have a duty to their stockholders to maximize profits, those in public office have their eyes on the polls. If they face being voted out of office, they respond. What we've seen the last few years from young people who protested the genocide in Gaza, students willing to risk their friends, their jobs, even their degrees, to fight against the corruption driving injustice. We need that kind of opposition to the AI trends now in motion. Because the current AI trend, like Gaza, is civilization changing. And the same people and companies that enabled Gaza are now enabling the societal changes driven by AI tech. If governments and big tech companies are allowed to continue as they are, our world won't be the same. It may not be as immediately critical for those in the EU as it is for us in America, but the tools, the systems, and the dangers are spreading. If it continues as it is, no one will be left untouched. So I'll stop here, and I'll end by quoting the most dangerous president in US history, one of the primary drivers of the current crisis, who often likes to say, "Thank you for your attention to this matter, because the future is yours." Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. Thanks, Camilla. Great speech, and we're definitely on crossroads. We're going to move to a slightly more lighter topic and a little bit more technical, straight from the source. It's probably not going to be that obvious initially, but we're going to get there. So I'm going to need the pointer. Oh, thank you. Okay. Next slide. Okay, let's talk about synthetic media, also known as AI slop, deepfake, etc. It's causing, in my opinion, serious problems, starting from being extremely annoying phenomena in our social media feeds to just plain online deception and fraud, to amplifying and even creating geopolitical tensions, as we've seen in the past few months, unfortunately. But that shows us how dangerous this tool can be at scale and why we should be worried about it. Okay, a little bit of history. In 2022, a few major diffusion models, image creating models, emerged and became available to the public in general. DALL-E 2, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, which is an open source project that makes it extremely interesting, extremely capable model. DALL-E 2, one of the first ones, and I've been following that industry for quite some time. That was really impressive at the time. You type a prompt and you get a picture. Lots of fun, very entertaining at times, but yeah, fun tool. But then I was thinking, what happens when these models become more sophisticated? And started to think about the reality that they will eventually, with more compute and more technological effort, they will eventually become very capable, and we will not be able to distinguish between reality and artificial, which is another potential problem. So that prompted me to think about potential solution, which we're going to get to later. Okay, and talking about what the future holds, more capable models continue to emerge, including a very interesting one, JEPA, by Yann LeCun, an extremely capable AI scientist. It's a world model. The algorithm is different. It knows physics much better than the diffusion models do, because with diffusion models, sometimes it gets it, sometimes it doesn't get the physics right, but JEPA will be revolutionary when they polish it. It's not out yet, but they're early attempts, but they're going in the right direction. But which means that it's going to become even harder to distinguish from reality. Okay. Okay, and that takes us to the economy of deepfakes and AI slop. At scale, the cost approaches zero. They're very easy to create, very quick. We know that you just go online, you go to your favorite tool, you generate images, and you pose them, for example. But at scale, even higher scale, you can even develop a system or an algorithm that generates them for you and distributes them over the internet, and that becomes dangerous. So the cost of production definitely tends to zero, and that enables bad actors to produce more of that media. And the incentives also pretty bad. There is financial incentive, obviously, from just manipulating public opinion to plain scam. People have terrible incentives to create that media, or just being lazy and using artificial media, just like I did in my presentation, to produce that content. So the incentives are, so we have two factors that drive that: lower cost, bad incentives, financial incentives. So what's being done about the problem? Detection tools, basically using one AI model to detect fake media produced by another AI model. The problem with that, however, is that it creates an infinite loop of arms race. The models will be better, and then the detection models will have to catch up and try to become better. So that's not sustainable. We've seen that by the way, in antivirus industry. It works, but it's an always kind of arms race between hackers and antivirus companies. Labeling is the other option, but creating the incentive for social media companies to do the labeling and enforcing labeling, it's probably problematic across various jurisdictions, and that takes us to the regulatory efforts. It's very hard to regulate across various jurisdictions like that, because obviously we can see right now we're not on the same page with many other countries, and I'm actually talking about the United States mostly as one of the technological forces behind AI, but we can see, we're not on the same page. International organizations are pretty dysfunctional right now, so that makes it pretty hard to enforce. And then we have the open source models, which are increasingly capable, and they're very available for all sorts of things, including bad actors who will eventually use those open source models to accomplish their goals. So it's not only available to high tech. If you have enough compute, you can deploy an open source model and then deploy it for the creation of AI slop or deepfakes, you name it. Okay, and there are also efforts to establish trust in media. And by media, I'm talking about digital media, videos, photos, audio. C2PA. It's a great effort by multiple companies, Adobe, Microsoft, and others. But it has its own problems. Basically, well, let's talk about what it does. It helps people to track the history of changes in the digital media, so provenance, basically. But the problems are you can, when you upload a picture to, let's say, social media, the metadata gets stripped often, so you can no longer tell whether that picture was signed with that standard. You can also take a screenshot, and then, that information is gone. So it doesn't solve the problem, but it helps organizations, let's say New York Times, to kind of have a pipeline of media and track the history of changes. So you have to have some authority behind you to kind of utilize that standard, or that's where it makes most sense. Okay, yeah, we just talked about that, so I'm going to move to the next slide. So what else can be done about it? All of us have a smartphone in our pocket. So that technically is a computer that has all sorts of sensors. It has cryptographic capabilities and so on. Tools that can be used to paint a picture, whether the media was taken by a real user, which is, in my opinion, what matters. If you can establish the authenticity or the user presence at the time of capturing, I think that solves several of the problems that we just outlined. So, we can, for example, use verified hardware in most of our phones. If it's not a jailbroken iPhone, for example, we can consider that the hardware is authentic, so we can use that to our advantage. We can use biometric binding, and there is a pushback against biometric, but biometrics can stay on the phone without leaving your phone and going to third parties, right? And basically, we can use the cryptographic signatures to create a signature of the exact pixels at the time of capture. So that makes things immutable, so you always have the source of truth as a cryptographic hash, and obviously the pixels of that picture that can be later compared to the cryptographic hash and go from there. So these could be powerful tools to establish the user presence, which in my view is probably the most important thing in the fight against AI-generated media. So the economics of authentic media, as we mentioned previously, the economy of fake media, everything tends to zero in terms of cost for production. Authentic media, however, human-generated media, will either stay at the same level or could slightly dip because of now we have the tools to create our own, imagine our, pictures of cats and so on. My prediction is that probably the value of human-generated media will go up, just because you can prove that you were right there in that moment in time, in that place, and you're a real person. So I think that there could be a real value in that, and probably that will create the incentive for people to continue to prove that they're human versus AI. So that takes us to the next slide. We at DangerX Labs have been, not only have been working, but have built an app that does exactly that. The app will be published very soon, but if you're interested to join our beta tester group, please scan the QR code, and we will send you access as soon as we are on the iOS Apple App Store, later on Android. So, and thank you. So.
Okay, so now just before finishing, if there is any question that would like to be asked from you guys. Otherwise, I will have a question for you anyway, so don't worry about it. Okay. Dulce, the student, please come over.
Tim,
Yes.
you just said if you can prove that you were there and you fixed something, etc. To my mind came a famous quote, popularized, not a saying, popularized by Shostakovich, the Russian composer. And it is something that Russians always say. And when he wrote it up in his memoirs, it became widely, beyond Russia, it became widely popular. And the saying goes, you lie like an eyewitness. An eyewitness. You lie like an eyewitness, because how trustworthy is that? You as an eyewitness. That's my question to you.
Now, was that a question, though?
Even those verifications, how can you still know if the news that you get it through eyewitness is
that is definitely hard, but you know we're making the attempt at least to. But yeah, good point. But it's going to be harder to lie with being an eyewitness, right? So AI makes it easier to lie. That's the answer for now. You know, and people are very creative, so I'm sure they're gonna come with yes, absolutely. So.
I just want to share a question with you guys about how you resource the news. Daily. I don't need to have hands up, I just need answers. So, where you guys try for news? Where you guys looking for news? Is it Instagram? Is it social media? Is it websites? How do you do? And how do you check? We gotta start from someone, guys. Journal. So you are the 1%. It is the 1%. Okay. Online journal. And do you have any particular news agency that you rely more rather than others? The Guardian and the Financial Times. 1%. So it's really interesting this because it's the very last answer that I was expecting, and I'm so happy about it. On the other side, reading through journals is still the traditional, most classical, most costly way to inherit news and create a personal belief, because also with big journals can happen with Financial Times, Guardian. We know it doesn't happen with those, luckily, but one single news is chewed once and then it gets chewed by another big, let's say for instance, I'll talk to you guys about ANSA, so everyone knows what we're talking about. It's the Italian agents news. One news goes out to ANSA, and then you see the same news in the same way, in the same pattern on Repubblica, Corriere della Sera, Stampa. So that's why I was wondering how and why you are looking for news. So I'm super impressed by the guy back there citing the Guardian. Anyone looking for news through socials? By Instagram, maybe?
I use a lot of YouTube.
You use a lot of news?
And watch a lot of independent videos rather than Google's news or things like that.
And do you receive any, do you do any fact-checking through comments, maybe? Or do you usually go interact with comments?
I mean, I'd rather
So another question is whether, to what extent you look to social media or journals for news reporting or for news analysis that helps you understand what's happening.
Yeah. I personally don't look fully in social media for news analysis or news reporting. What I done was that maybe even if I don't want to look for news, I look for news in social media because maybe during the scholarship period, during when I'm looking for in social media for maybe other purposes, I get into political discourses or different kind of things. When I want to look for analysis of these kind of things, I personally search through the internet and I try to find reliable sources like journals, random journals.
Good, thank you. Interesting. Anyone else?
Would you explain further part of biometric?
Okay, so the way we use it is we use it once to authenticate the actual hardware during the initial steps. We don't use it when you take pictures. So, and well, I don't want to get into too much technical details. What's that?
That's the details I need.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, we're still unpublished, so I would rather not get into proprietary information, but, broadly speaking, we authenticate the device and, we use a bunch of cryptography that's related to the biometric tool, yeah. But biometrics are being used at least once, but not during photo capturing. So. Okay?
Once again, thank you to all of you for your speeches. They were very nice. I have a question for Camilla. Okay. Back in the 80s in Italy, we had a very famous political man, and he was usually criticized by people saying that he was a political dwarf. In response, he said that he couldn't see, he said, I may be a political dwarf, but I can't see around me any giant. It was Andreotti, I don't know if you know, but in Italy he's quite famous. You said that the regulation of AI is very slow, and is very slower than AI itself, than AI evolution itself. But we can all, I think, agree that we are circled by political dwarfs worldwide at the moment. But also in the optimistic view that we would have political giants, they would be able, realistically, to be just behind the evolution and or ahead of the AI evolution with regulation. So if we had capable political men and people and women, would they be able to stay behind the evolution of AI at this speed?
Good question. There aren't many, right? And certainly in America, as we're seeing, one right now was just forced out of the U.S. Congress, Thomas Massey. I don't know if you followed that. A congressman from Kentucky. He was taking on the AI issue in addition to the Epstein files and other really critical issues. But Trump put a lot of weight and money behind an opponent that he just pulled, from nobody knew the guy. And Massey lost, even though he was extraordinarily popular. The thing is, Massey Massey is MIT educated. He has 30 patents to his name, and he's someone that's very capable of taking on the AI issue. It takes somebody like that. And, you know, when he was pushed out of Congress, he immediately turned around and filed papers with the Election Commission for 2028. And it looks like he'll be running for president. There aren't many masses, and it's but there are a lot of young people with, you know, real technology skills and commitment to real change that could make a difference too. So, you know, Massey is middle-aged, so if he doesn't get shot, we could have him for a while if he makes it. And it's hard. It's really hard in this environment because it's political tide is it's hard, especially in America right now. And it's you know, I say jokingly if he doesn't get shot. He's joking. Yeah. So yeah, the Masseys of the world, I think, could. And then obviously support themselves, surround themselves with the kind of you know, cabinet and support staff, make the difference. It's possible, not easy, for sure.
If there are no further questions, just one little reminder before wrapping this up. For those that are willing, if there are those that are willing, tomorrow morning we can have a workshop on communication, media, and AI. If there is anyone willing to participate, I kindly ask you to refer to Domenico. How weird it sounds to call you like this, but or to the guys that helped us organize this cycle of events. I believe the time that would suit us best would be around 9:30, so 1 hour-ish. So if any one of you guys is interested into, please let us know and we'll organize it. For anything else, I thank you really everyone for this occasion.
Or just show up.
So we just important. And I'll leave you guys for the closure, knowing that this is the last panel of this cycle of conference. If there is anything that the headmaster would like to say to conclude.
I just want to thank Domenico for the great job, all the guys of the Collegio. But it's only, the applause means that you must work also next year for another cycle, okay? And of course, thank you, all of you, and we have a little gift for you, okay? For the college, okay? And for you. Okay, so just to repeat what Luca said before, even 2-3 guys can be useful for a very restricted workshop tomorrow. Yeah, in a small room, often it's, even more useful and in depth. So I think it could be a good opportunity for people more interested, okay? Thank you again. Bye-bye.